looked at me and he waited probably about maybe 3 minutes or so. And he looked at me and said, LaChele, he said, have you talked to Terrell, your husband? And I said, well, no. I said, Ernie and I, we came in because we got the message. I got the message that you wanted to speak with me about, him. And so he took a breath and he said, he went to the doctor on Thursday. And he came home. Did he say anything? What did he say to you? And I said, well, thank goodness he came home and said, all of his test results were negative. And so he did exactly what you did. He did like this. And he said, I'm so sorry. He said, I'm so really sorry. He said, your husband have 6 months to a year. He's been diagnosed with AIDS. And it didn't register. I totally went into denial. It didn't register. And I just did, I shook my head, and I stayed with him at the hospital for 3 weeks, 3 long weeks. And it wasn't until those 3 weeks after hearing this that your aunt, who was gone, and I will never forget that day. And I know, again, the Lord is just letting me know it's time. You got to, the denial is over. And I went out to the nurse's station because she called and she said, LaChele, how is Terrell? And I said, girl, he's fine. I said, they just found out he had meningitis. I said, he's fine. I said, he's fine. And the Holy Spirit said, look down. And his chart was on the counter. And she kept calling. She was going, LaChele. And I couldn't even talk anymore. And when the Holy Spirit, when I looked down, his name, and it says diagnosis AIDS, and I lost it. And I mean, not after knowing and the doctor telling me this, that he had been diagnosed. And I went into the room and I looked at him. I said, you lied to me. You don't have meningitis. You have AIDS. And so he looked at me and said, no, I don't. No, I don't. And I said, yes, you do. And I would never forget that day because when I finally found out, I called my sister, Doris. And I said to her, and I said, Doris, I said, Terrell have AIDS. And so she said, Shell, but you knew. And I said, no. And so I went out to the beach. I left the hospital because they were trying to get me. And Doris, they could call back and talk to her, say, your sister, she left. We wanted to give her something, but she left. And I went out and I drove around. I said, Lord, how can this be? I said, you have AIDS? And so Doris, she found me. She said, Shell, she said, but you knew. And I said, Doris, I said, no. I said, and he have AIDS. And I said, how am I going to tell people this? And I said, I thought he had meningitis. And so she said, Shell, she said, I am so sorry. And to this day, honest to God, it's just so much about her that I look back now. And if it wasn't for her, finding me, I don't know. And it wasn't that I was contemplating anything. It just hit me. It was just like, wow, this guy has AIDS. And so the most, with that, and then when I came back and I just told him, I said, you know what, I'm going to leave. And I didn't stay anymore. And he came home. He was in the hospital a month, and he came home. And after, finding out, and I'm like, Lord, you know what? You're going to have to help me to deal with this. And I did not tell your grandmother. I didn't tell her for almost a year. She didn't understand. And if it, like I said, your uncle and your aunt, if it wasn't for these two people, the survival for us would have been, for me, it would have been so difficult. But when I tell you that they were there from beginning to end. One of the things that I remember praying and asked God for is to close your eyes, close your ears. I said, Lord, please don't let her find out. I said, every time she hear the word AIDS, please, Lord, just shut everything down. I only remember one time that you looked at that movie that came out, Philadelphia, and you came in the room, you said, Mommy, you should see this guy. He looks like my dad. And I started pleading the blood, you know, me with some blood. I started pleading the blood. And then everything that I went through, this was the most amazing part, that every time, now this, your dad, and because of who he was on the medicine, the amphotericin. And every time he went, he had to go 3 times a week. I went with him on his appointments. And the most amazing part, let me back up, because he was diagnosed in 86. And I got laid off my job, I think the week before he was diagnosed. That was the amazing part. So I wasn't working. And literally, he would go to the doctor and he would ask, you know, how am I going to get there? I said, don't worry. I went and I sat with him 4 hours, 3 times a week, because I didn't want him to be alone. You know, and I still did that. I sat with him for 4 hours. This medicine took 4 hours to go into his body, because you would go out there, people were left alone. And I just wanted, you know, him not to be alone. So then after we would go to his appointments, he finally, Dr. LaVoy, who the doctor that you were speaking of, ended up being his doctor. And I will never forget his first appointments. When we first met her, she came out and, you know, she checked him, you know, she was looking at him. She said, LaChele, can I talk to you for a few minutes? And so, and I said, sure. She said, let's go in my office. And he was in the other room. And she said, can I tell you something? She said, I want to share something with you. She said, I'm not sure what your husband is telling you. She said, because one thing that he told me, and through all of that, he told me he had only been with one guy then, after I found out he had AIDS. He said, well, I was only with one guy. I don't even know how, you know, this would have happened. She said, I want you to remember this. If you never remember anything else, sperm flowed through a woman and not through a man. And I said, okay. She said, because what I want to tell you, she said, he may have come back in 1980. She said, but you are such a blessed woman. And thank God you had no sex and nothing going through, you know, nothing transmitted, none of that. He's been HIV for probably 7, 8 years. And this is prior to him being diagnosed with you. And I said, oh my God, you know, so even to think about that and then going back. And I said, Lord, only you. And then, so this went on from 1986 to 19 till he passed away, but he went back to work for about a year. You know, maybe about a year. I would say probably about a year and a half. You know, after he got out of the hospital, after probably about 4 months, you know, he went back to work. And then this November, well, I remember, you know, all of you guys, I don't care when he got sick. And what was so amazing, and it still amazes me, like I said, to talk about your uncle and your aunt. I could call them. He's never, ever, I never called 911. Now, you know, we lived in San Carlos. They lived in San Francisco. I can call them. I don't care if it was 1 o'clock. I don't care if it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I get on the phone. I said, Ernie, Terrell is sick. He said, I'm on my way. They would literally drive to San Carlos, and we would drive back to San Francisco to take him to the hospital. And this went on for a while. And then, you know, you guys went to see him. He made a mistake and threw up.
That was my first and last time going.
And you and Abe, y'all just decided y'all were not going back.
That was at Christmas time, and we went looking cute. And he threw up, and it wasn't like a normal throw up. It was like a projectile type thing. And
but I do remember, and some of the funny things, even when he was sick, and this is why, you know, and along with that, before this, again, you know, your uncle has always now, he's the patriarch of our family. I remember him bringing all of the children. You know, had a family meeting, and he, you know, let you guys know, and your dad did have meningitis. It was called cryptococcal meningitis, that he had, and we didn't shed the light on the AIDS. We didn't do that. He even went over, to your grandparents, had a family meeting over there. And he did let you guys know that, you know, he wasn't going to live. You know, that was already discussed in our family meeting. And, you know, like I said, the love that this guy had, that people loved him so much. I mean, they would come around, people would come over to visit him and, would give him a kiss, give him hugs. And then there were some that would come, you know, that was standoffish. And I let him know that is your prerogative. You know, you're not doing anything wrong. That's your prerogative, you know, but we still weren't discussing it. And then, like I said, with your uncle and them, coming over anytime that I needed them, they were there. So it wasn't until, even with your grandmother, I did not tell her, because her thing was, you need to get off your high horses, because now you're going on another trip, because your uncle and your aunt, they would make sure that I needed to leave. I just needed a break, and she said, you got to come off your high horses. So this particular, at the end of 1988, because I didn't tell her for a year, it had to be 1987, because I didn't tell her, because I didn't want her to worry, So then I called her from work and I told her that I needed to talk to her. And so she said, are you okay? And I said, Mother, I'm fine. She said, is Dibney okay? Mother, Dibney's fine. I told her, but I need to talk to you. So I ended up sharing with her that I said, how I've been, going away. Terrell hasn't, he's been sick. She said, no, I understand that. And I said, well, I need to tell you, Terrell doesn't have that much longer to live. Terrell have AIDS. So at that point, she fell back, it was devastating to her. But your grandmother's funny. Your grandmother, who would every day then after that, for probably about 3 months, you would be in the room with him. You would be laying down. This is what she would do. Jam. I said, yes, Mother. Come here for a minute. Dip me in there laying with Terrell. I said, Mother, she's fine. I said, I promise.
There was a lot that people didn't understand about the disease. So
right.
Everything was scary.
Everything. And then she would tell me, because I never got out of the bed with your dad. I slept with him until he went in the hospital. And even, he was, how clean your dad was,
Okay.
Everything stayed immaculate, and then she didn't want me in the bathroom, but you in there using this. I said, Mother, I promise you. And like you said, people were ignorant, they didn't know, about the disease. And I will never forget, in November, he looked at me, he said, I can't do this no more. I can't do it. And I said, what are you saying? He said, I can't take this medicine anymore. Then they were giving, he was taking AZT. He said, I can't do this. He said, and I said, that's your choice.
How many pills was he taking a day?
He was taking probably then, because he had the amphotericin, and the AZT was so powerful. He was only probably taking 4 pills, but the AZT was powerful. I don't even know if they still do the AZT. People are living longer and longer. I still have a friend that's been HIV for 30 years. So they're living longer, but in November, he said, I can't do it. I said, that's up to you. That's your choice. So one of the things during that time, he said, can I talk to you? I need to really talk to you. And I said, sure. So I'm sure you remember the recliner that was in the room, because that's the one I moved when I had to whoop you.
Yes, I remember the recliner.
So he said, this may take a while, but I need to talk to you. So during that time, the first thing he shared with me, because I was liking this guy in New York, and I was so surprised that he shared so much, but I know this was his way. He was asking me for forgiveness. He said, I want you to know that I hurt you once, and I don't ever want anybody to hurt you again. He said, because things that I didn't share with you, and I want you to always know that anybody that you come in contact, and he was the one that told me, you will know. He said, because the person that you're liking now, he's gay. He said, he's gay. And I looked at him, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, he still don't want me with anybody. And so he said, no. He said, don't ever. He said, and I'm going to ask you for forgiveness. He said, because somebody else that I was with, he said, I did so much to you. He said, the person that I was with, I would never forget, because I lived around the corner from my mother. He was having an affair in our apartment. And he said, I'm so glad that you didn't come home. He said, because I did so much to you and you didn't deserve it. But, one of the things that I appreciate, you've been here for me. And I just want you to know that how much I care. I love you, and that was his way, and he said, now it's time. And this was at the end of 88. He said, it's time for me to talk to Tiffany. I said, okay. So he said, now, I said, this is the time now that you could tell her. You know, and like I said, I thank God because you were a funny person, because even when he would be really sick, and thank God, you know, I mean, well, Tanisha was there, and because you felt like, you know what, you need to get up out of that bed and go fix your own tea. No, I will not bring you any tea, Tiffany. We know. So, no, I will not. You know, so your cousin would do it. But he spoke with you, I think, all of about, I don't even know if it was 10 or 15 minutes.
It was probably a 5-minute conversation, if that long. And he just came in my room and he closed the door and he said, I know you know what's wrong with me. And I said, yeah, you have AIDS. But even in my young mind, I think I was 13. No, I was 12, because it wasn't December yet. And in my young mind, I'm thinking, they said you had 6 months, but I think he lived past that 6 months. Mm-hmm. And so he said, yeah, I have AIDS. And he said, I just want you to always remember that you are always going to be my baby girl. And that's all he said. And we hugged, and he walked out. So I never had the opportunity to ask him, you know, anything about it. And I probably wouldn't have, but that was one of my last conversations with him. And it was a 2-minute conversation. And there's so much now that I wish I could have asked about his life and just things that he went through, because I think they've obviously impacted me over the years. And so yeah, that was our 2-minute conversation.
Yeah, well, I knew that took place. And then after we went, my last visit at the hospital was actually January the 17th, 1989. I went, and as a matter of fact, I had been there all day. And then I was really surprised to see, and it's nothing like a mother's intuition, that his mom showed up out of the blue, you know. And when she came, I looked up, I said, oh my God, I'm so glad to see you. And like I said, it's nothing like, you know, her feeling whatever she felt, it happened, you know. So this was on January the 17th, 1989. This guy had already told me how he wanted his funeral to be, what he wanted to wear, what he wanted everybody to wear. We did do exactly what he asked for. But that night, that day, your uncle and your aunt, I told him, I said, I want to go over to Foucher's. I want to start preparing, you know, to getting things ready. So your uncle said, are you sure? And I said, yes. And it was probably must have been about 7:30. And I told him, I said, so we're over there, we got everything, you know. I told him this is what we wanted, you know. And about 10:20, I looked at your uncle and I said, I need to go back to the hospital. I need to go back. And I will never forget, I went down to the phone and I called you. And I told you, and I said to you, and I said, Tiffany, I said, I'm going to stay here for a while, because your dad, you know, his breathing is short. I'm not going to stay, you know, I'm going to stay. And so you said, okay. And I will never forget, because my prayer, and I told the Lord, I said, please let me be there when he takes his last breath. So I went down, I came back, and your uncle kept going in and out of the room. No, I told him, and I said, Terrell needs to be clean, you know. And so, no, the first thing that happened, your grandmother, when I walked in, she said, I'm so glad to see you. And I said, why? She said, because he keep asking for you. And I said, oh my God. I said, and I looked at him, I was okay, I'm back, you know. And so then when I went down, came to use the phone, called you, came back down, and your uncle came out of the room with his hand folded. And so he said in his mind, he was thinking, how am I going to tell Shell this? How am I going to tell her this? And so when I walked back, and your mom, Auntie Doris and your grandmother, you know, were standing there. And so she said, so he looked at me, he said, Shell, Terrell is gone. I said, no, he's not. He's not gone. No, he's not. So I walked back in the room. And I looked at him, and, he was looking at me, just kind of like, just looking at me. So I looked at him and I said, see, he's not gone. And then after that, I said, this was nobody but God. And so he looked up at me, and then he took his last breath. And I bent down and I kissed him on the forehead, and I said, now he's gone. It's over. It's over. And it was over. And his funeral was huge. A 2-day, we had a memorial, and then we had the funeral. And life after that. And I have to truly say, when he passed away, I missed him for a long time. And I never ever shared that I missed him because he was just, like I said, he was just a kind person. At first, I felt like, why did he leave us? Why did he have to do this? He didn't have to do this. And I was angry. I was angry for that part, because I said, we deserve better than that. But and just to go back a little bit, and I asked him, I said, why did you marry me? Why did you marry me? He said, because I thought I could change. He said, this started when I was 16. I was 16 years old. And then after that, I was so angry, and I would have dreams, that I was having sex with him. And I told your grandmother, I said, why am I dreaming that I'm having sex with somebody that died of a deadly disease? She said, you're going to have to forgive him at the grave. And I just kind of wrote a letter to say, I am so sorry. You were a kind person, and I loved you for who you were. We weren't a husband and wife love relationship, but you were a kind person. And now I look back over these 28 years, he was a wonderful person, and just, like you said, got caught up, didn't know how to, the counseling, like you said, wasn't there. I don't care, families, that can't sit, we can't talk. And I am so glad that you and I are sharing this moment, that we could truly say that after 28 years, a mother and daughter is breaking their silence. And I love you for it, and when I tell you, yes, today is your birthday, yes, we're crying, but it was so worth it that now, because we sit around, of course, in our circle, I can talk about, but I've never shared with outsiders. And I just want people to know that, for those that didn't know, those that don't understand, this was our time. And like I said, I told them that it was my time, your time, when you were ready to share with the world about your father. And I love you for it.
I love you. One thing we don't want people to think that these are tears of sadness. I mean, obviously, when you talk about the past, you get teary-eyed. But my dad was such a wonderful person that his story is worth telling. So, and if it helps someone to hear that my mom can come through something like that and be the woman that she is, it's time to break the silence. So, with that said,
of a woman.
With that said, there'll probably be a follow-up if you have any questions about AIDS or living with someone that has HIV or AIDS, or if you yourself are going through that and you don't know how to talk to someone about it. I urge you to, it impacts more than just you. It impacts people. So please get tested, know your status, keep yourself protected, and together we can make a difference. Bye, till next.
That we've just never really talked about it. And now I have to truly say, yes, you're my daughter, but I am so proud of you, because even during all of that and then after that, it just, some really children, they start either on drugs, they start to say, I couldn't handle this, but it's just that relationship, because I'm so glad that you and I had that open relationship that I could truly say, yes, I was your mother, and yes, I was a father, not so much of that male, but it's just that I was there, and today I celebrate your birthday, and it's my birthday too.
That's what Mama just said. She said, when it's your birthday, it's her birthday too.
Oh my God. And I so love you for just being who you are and how we made it through. And the word of God said, that to me, we cleave. We were a family, and was our time, to share. We've never done it, and I was so proud when you say that you wanted to interview me, and I agreed to it. Okay, and I agreed to it. I'm like, and I don't know what it is. I'm like, oh God, I'm so nervous. But you're a great interviewer, and I love
What's
you.
funny is, imagine if we didn't have a close relationship. And I was finding all this stuff out now.
Right,
like,
exactly.
What? You went through what?
Exactly. And that's why I said I'm so glad. And to me, I appreciate and admire you. You are actually following in my footsteps with your girls. You guys have open, conversations. They're getting older. And this is what we have to stop doing. Stop hiding even behind our children. Oh, well, we don't want them to know. And then after it comes out, then who's hurt?
Right.
The
people that are left.
Exactly. So no. So and I too, know that you wish you would have been able to have more conversations with your dad. But again, your dad was not a communicator. So you have to love him beyond the grave.
And I wasn't either.
And you weren't either. You just
I'm
not
still
starting
coming out.
Right. And we're still learning. And like I said, my birthday to you, my happy birthday to you. You are my mentor. You are my confidant, and I'm learning so much, from you, where you stand now as my best friend. And guess what? Your dad would be so proud of you. He would be so proud of you. And I know that for a fact. He would be so proud of you. And, you were short-lived with him, 14 years?
13.
Well, 13 years.
I had just turned 13.
But still, even with that, just being a baby when you left. And sometimes, I look at that and it's not being selfish, but I'm glad that you weren't glued,
Right.
Because I think it would have been more devastation for me to watch, the pain. But I want you to continue to talk, about it. Even with me, yes, we do cry. But, whatever you want to, talk about in your feelings, because I think this is the time that you need it, where you are, because I think what you're doing now and where your journey, where your destiny is and your purpose, this is what you're going to be doing. So you have to
Right.
be, I want you to know, that's why I said I'm so proud to hear that you wanted to talk about it. It was totally shocked, at work when you sent it. I'm like, really? It was more excitement, but then I'm like, I got nervous, but like you said, these are all tears that, yes, we get here. And I've spent 28 years, and people know, I don't care how many times I talk about it, I still do the same thing.
Right.
Because of who he was,
It doesn't even seem like that long. When you
28.
put 28 years, I was like, dang.
28 years.
That's a long time.
A long time, and he was a great guy.
And I don't even
shocker.
think that it was a secret. It was just something until now.
And I did, and
God just.
Well, actually, and I did want to, and that's the question I did want to ask you, and I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to say, what brought you to this
God.
moment? And okay, so this is where you said it was time,
Right, because I think I've hinted to people, but then even when you do that, it just, I don't know, it wasn't time, I guess. A question for you: did you have to get tested after?
No, see, here's the thing. That's what I was just getting ready to say that, because Dr. Lavoie, when she was telling me, she said, "There's no need." She said, because if you were not having sexual contacts with him, if there was nothing, no transfer, she said, you're fine. She said, you're fine. She said, that's why I said you are so blessed. She said, did you ever, go down on him? And I said, never, not one time. I've never, not one time, not one time. And that was the blessed part for me, because of course, but the one thing that, yes, be grateful that you did not have a child, because you would have also been the carrier and your child probably wouldn't have lived. And I'm like, only God. So no, I did not. So this was absolutely outstanding, and I'm so proud of you. I am. This.
Here are a few facts about HIV and AIDS. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, and if left untreated, HIV can lead to AIDS, which stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. HIV and AIDS interfere with the body's ability to fight infection. HIV can only be contracted through specific activities, and only certain body fluids from a person who has HIV can transmit HIV. HIV is spread through blood, semen or cum, preseminal fluid or precum, or rectal fluid, vaginal fluid, pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding. Although the number of HIV/AIDS cases has lessened over the decades, there are still currently 36.7 million people worldwide living with HIV/AIDS. In the US alone, there are 1.2 million people with the disease. 1.8 million children worldwide are HIV positive. Most were infected by their HIV positive mothers during pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding. 1 in 8 people are HIV positive but are unaware of their infection. Remember, there is no cure for HIV or AIDS. However, getting treatment reduces transmission risk. Before the development of certain medications, people with HIV could progress to AIDS in just a short few years. But today, most people who are HIV positive and receiving treatment do not progress to AIDS. The only way to know if you have HIV is to get tested. Many clinics, hospitals, community centers, substance abuse programs, and health centers offer testing. You could also buy home HIV testing kits online or at your local pharmacy. There's no excuse for not knowing your status. Get educated about the disease, get tested, and protect yourself. Together, we can stand up and make a difference. Remembering you today, Daddy. I love you. TC.
When the rain is blowing in your face and the whole world is on your case, I could offer you a warm embrace to make you feel my love. When the evening shadows